welcome to another episode of Actually, You Can. It is a real pleasure to be joined on today's episode by the beautiful soul that is Angela Louise. Ange is a Trauma Informed Facilitator, coach, and healer who is deeply passionate about empowering women on their journey of motherhood. In this episode, Ange and I dive into the concept of conscious conception and conscious parenting, offering valuable insights and guidance for mothers and mothers-to-be. We discuss how to prepare oneself for the transformative journey of having a child while addressing common experiences and challenges faced by mothers that aren't often spoken about on the path to pregnancy. Whether you're trying to conceive, currently pregnant, or a new mother, this podcast is dedicated to supporting you. Get ready to step powerfully into the journey towards motherhood because actually, you can. Hi, Ange, and welcome to the show.
Hello, good to be here.
And so we're going to talk about the journey into motherhood. And before we dive deep into that, I'd love for you to share more about yourself. So who is Angela Louise?
That's a good question. And when you told me you were going to ask that, I thought, oh, we could be here for half an hour with that answer because it's so broad. Yeah, I guess that I come from a background of education and left the education system a while ago to step more into healing work. And so I'm someone who is an advocate for children, a really big advocate for children and the inner child within each and every one of us. So I'm a coach, I'm a facilitator, I'm an educator, I'm a healer. I've been trained in many, many different modalities that help people to really reclaim their power, remember who the fuck they are. Hope I can swear on this. And to speak their truth. And specifically, in the last few years, I've been working a lot more alongside parents, particularly mothers, mums and mums-to-be who are desiring to birth a legacy, birth a new version of themselves, or birth a child into this world.
And motherhood is a journey that you are deep in the midst of. How many months pregnant are you at the moment?
Getting towards the 7-month mark, and it's been a very big journey.
And we're going to delve into that journey, both your personal journey, but also the journey that you support other mothers who have just either birthed a child or they're going through the pregnancy journey themselves. And as we were talking about before the show, you mentioned that really the journey to motherhood starts before conception. And so I'd love to start there. If someone is thinking, yes, I want to start a family, I want to enter my journey to motherhood, what are the sorts of things that you think that they can be preparing for before they start to try to conceive a child?
Yeah, so it was a big journey for me. I've always wanted children. In fact, and I share this very openly, I was pregnant when I was 20 and didn't have my first child then and there. It wasn't the right time. And so as I sort of went on throughout life, got to sort of my 30s, mid-30s, and that desire really came back very strongly. So for me, firstly, it was like calling in a partner, consciously calling in a partner. So having to move through the blocks around that because there was a lot that was going on for me. We've been single for 10 years. So there was a lot that needed to be looked at in relationship to my, I guess, the way in which I related to men. And then from that journey, once I called in the relationship with my partner that I have now, it was about firstly getting on the same page. So did he want a baby when I wanted a baby? Maybe, maybe not. So we had to move through a lot of that. I think with women, sometimes there is this disbelief in our bodies as we get older. So it's that ticking time bomb that, can play on so many women's minds. And that started to happen for me where it was like, am I going to be able to conceive? Is my body capable of conceiving? But I knew intuitively, because I work quite spiritually in the work in which I do, and I work as a channel and I do connect with spirits, that I knew that there were these children. There was a little boy and a little girl there waiting to come through as our kids. So there was like this reliance on a deep faith and a deep knowing that I had, but then we still needed to move through all the 3D human stuff as well. So once we were on the same page, for me, it was like I needed to prepare my body. So I actually went through 18 months of working with minerals and preparing my body to be a really capable and healthy vessel to receive this baby. I had to work through a lot of receiving challenges. So where I wasn't in my feminine energy. So a lot of women in today's society, because we're working and because we're so goal focused and driven, we're spending a lot of time in that yang energy. Some may refer to that as masculine energy. We have both, but we're busy. We're in the logical mind. We're doing. There's to-do lists. There's decisions to make. There's leadership happening, and there's a lot of time that we're dropping back into that yin state of receiving and being in that feminine energy. And so a lot of work needed to be done around that for me. So healing why it was that I had so much resistance around being in my feminine energy, which really went all the way back to my relationships and all the betrayal and the hurt. And why did I build this big barrier and guard around my heart and my being? And why did I feel I needed to be in this masculine energy to protect myself? So it was an unraveling of all of that, and really learning how to receive myself in all ways and be able to have my own back and support myself to then be able to receive my partner, which then meant I would be able to receive a child. So there's, I guess, a pattern or a theme that was running through my journey that I needed to work with. And I see it happen with a lot of women as well, that, operating in this masculine, trying to control when they're going to fall pregnant. It's going to happen here and it's going to happen in this month and it needs to happen in this way and at this time. And we really don't have as much control as what we think that we do. And these little spirit babies, they know exactly when they want to come through. They know the exact time. And yeah, so I think all we can do as women is really prepare our body, make sure the hormones are in balance, make sure that you're nourished, make sure that all your minerals and vitamins and everything's in check within your body. And then moving through any subconscious beliefs. So there was a lot of fear there for me. There was a lot of fear around motherhood because I didn't particularly want to mother in the way in which I've seen other mothers. So there was a bit of fear of like, I don't want to be the mother that's burnt out. I don't want to be the mother that's not supported. I don't want to be the mother that then doesn't have a purpose or, all she does is change nappies. So moving through all of those fears, because unconsciously, if there is blocks there, then that can also contribute to the inability to necessarily conceive. So yeah, it's a big journey.
Yeah, and it's one that you mentioned, and in your work, I know you mentioned the word consciously quite often. Before we dig a little bit deeper, I'd love for you to give some more context to the word conscious and what does a conscious journey look like versus an unconscious journey?
Yeah. So conscious to me means aware. So becoming aware. So it's bringing what is in the unknown or the unseen in the unconscious and bringing it into awareness. So I had no idea that there was fear riddled through my body about becoming a mother. It's been my biggest dream. It's something I wanted my entire life. I had no idea that there was fear there. And it wasn't until actually I went and had a womb harrow massage and was preparing my womb, with all the tissues and getting everything really active and clearing out any old emotions and stagnation of energy. And yeah, I had a huge release of fear. It all came up through my body and all the beliefs and all the worries, about being a mother who owns a business and, how's that going to look? And all of these sorts of things came up for me to move through, but I wasn't aware of them. So they weren't conscious. I didn't know that they existed until I delved a little deeper.
And so, what's the benefit of becoming aware of things? Why
Yeah.
can't we just stuff all this down and just ignore it and move on with life?
Sometimes I do say ignorant can be bliss. Because we don't know what we don't know. But unfortunately, when we don't know what we don't know, there's certain things that are playing out in our unconscious that are blocking us from what we truly desire in life. So when we become aware, we can know what the blocks are, and without shaming them or without thinking that we're broken, because we're not broken. But we're just simply becoming aware of, wow, there's that block there, or oh, there's that unprocessed maybe event from the past or trauma. So becoming aware helps us to process, to release from the body, and I guess reclaim our power to be able to move forward with what we are actually desiring.
And so, what are some ways that a woman could become more conscious in the lead up to wanting to conceive a child? You mentioned that the womb massage was something that was a great tool for you. What are some other ways that a woman could start to become more aware before she embarks on this journey?
Yeah, that's a good one. So for me, it was actually connecting with my womb. So how connected are you to your cycle, your menstrual cycle? There's actually 4 stages to our cycle. So becoming aware of those 4 stages of your cycle, becoming aware of what actually happens for women on a mental and emotional and physical level when we bleed, starting to understand your cycle for yourself and what that means for you. Because right before we bleed and when we bleed is when a lot of our subconscious stuff will start to surface. So when we start to take time out of our busy schedule and learn to be with ourselves, and create stillness, and create that deeper connection with self, we can really become quite aware. We can become aware of our patterns. We can become aware of emotions, maybe emotions that we hadn't even actually felt before, because often we distract, disassociate, get really busy, or we're quite disconnected from our body. And so we don't feel what's actually really there. So I think that, the conscious conception journey, or, before you calling your child in, it's really important that you're connecting with your womb. I know where I live on the Northern Rivers, I actually started going to a class called Into the Sensuous, and it was about somatic sort of movement that helped me to connect to my womb. So it was dancing with my womb and really exploring inside my womb and what did that feel like and what was laying within the womb. So there was a lot of that. I actually also did a lot of yoni. I did went and saw different people. So I did yoni steaming, which helps clear out the womb. I did yoni mapping, which was a very intense experience for me. Something that, maybe not all women feel comfortable with. But as I've shared with you before, Miffy, and I share with all of my clients, issues are in our tissues. So we got to get in there. And so I worked with a beautiful practitioner who was able to go inside and actually press on the different part of my yoni and go inside. And really, when she would press on certain parts, emotion would come out. It's the same with the womb hara massage. So just, yeah, being open-minded uh, to exploring yourself on a deeper level, uh, in terms of physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of it.
And so, as you're going through those techniques and stuff is just coming up, it's really easy to think, like, where the fuck is this coming from? Like, I thought I was cool, and then someone done this massage and all this stuff's coming up. Like, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from?
Yeah, well, for me, it can come from like generational. So for me, I remember when I was having a womb home massage, and I actually saw my grandmothers come in, and I saw my grandmother and her sisters, and I saw all the traumas that they had been through. And I was crying, as my womb was being pressed on and massaged. And a lot of the trauma lies in our tissues. So it's in our body on a cellular level. And obviously, subconscious memories are connected to that. So if you're quite in tune and you're quite open, then you may start to have these realizations. Um, and yeah, for me, it was generational. So there was a lot of generational stuff. There's been a lot of abuse and sexual abuse through my female lineage, and through my male lineage. there was a lot of physical abuse as well, and a lot of work stuff. And yeah. So most people will have some form of trauma in their lineage because it goes back so many generations. And then we've got to remember that. So inside me right now, I have a daughter, and inside her, she's got children. Okay. So I was inside my mother, who is inside my grandmother. And so we carry also our own journey of being in the womb and our mother's journey of being in the womb and all of these memories. So we have our experiences as well as children, and things that get stored deep in the subconscious, experiences from the past, that maybe weren't necessarily processed on a conscious level through awareness, and maybe weren't felt and moved through the body so that the nervous system could regulate itself. And so when we have all these past experiences, it's stored in it. And on a soul level, what I believe is that we continue to recreate those past experiences in a similar way, maybe not exactly, but in a similar way, because our body's trying to heal itself. It's trying to bring it up to purge all of that out, all of that energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think, especially when you mention the patterns, I think to use the words conscious and unconscious to say in awareness of, you mentioned, and we're talking about this previously as well, is when you enter the journey to parenthood, you can have an idea of the sort of mother you want to be. So I want to be this sort of mother, or I don't want to be this sort of mother. And so there's things that you might be consciously aware of that you're working towards doing or not doing, but there's also those other ones that you might not be aware of. And I think that's to what you're speaking to, is there's might be traumas or experience that happened in generational lineage that you might not be aware of that is suddenly coming up for some reason. And it's using those sort of modalities to address that and become more aware of it so you can process it so they don't have an impact on your journey.
Yeah, because it will impact your journey. And also what we don't heal, we pass on. And I do want to make a point of saying that, because otherwise we can get stuck in this journey of like needing to heal all the time because I don't want my kids to have anything wrong with them. Your children are going to come to earth with their own soul contract. Okay. So they've got their own lessons. They've got their own soul growth and evolution, that is going to unravel, and they have chosen us or you, whoever's listening, they've chosen you as their parent. And there's a reason for that. So there's an element of also not going into over control of trying to protect and wrap them up in bubble wool, because also they're here to have an experience. They're here to grow and evolve as a soul. And we can't always control that either.
And you put that so beautifully, because I think, you know, it's a mother's desire to raise a child that is loved, that feels safe, that has a really fulfilling life. And the way you mentioned that a child is here on their own soul journey is really beautiful. And we can't control 100% of what that looks like. All you can do is provide the space for them to be able to navigate that journey. And so I'd love to hear, how are you approaching that? Like, how are you going into this journey going, there's going to be shit that just happens to my child,
Mm.
and that's just what's going to happen. How are you coming to peace with that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean I've worked with parents for many, many years, 20 years. And so I have seen parents who have heightened anxiety and panic and really want to protect their children at all costs. Some might refer to this as helicopter parenting, right? And I really get it. I do. I get it. Because the pain that you may experience when seeing your child suffer and you don't want them to suffer is hard. And I can only, I think about my own mother in this instance, and I think, oh my gosh, she watched me go through so much suffering. But all she could do was become a beautiful guide. So so much gratitude for my mom, because she gave me the gift of yoga and she gave me the gift of meditation and different things, and the breath and things that have helped support me. So I think as a mother, if what you can do is realize that you're not here to rescue, and it's that whole drama triangle, the rescuer, the victim. if you can realize that you're here to guide and mentor and coach your child as opposed to fix, rescue, or save them, I think that the journey can be a little more easeful. So I see that's my role. That's my job is to do the best that I can with the information and the knowledge that I have, and um, whatever unravels is meant to be. There's going to be lessons. I think that often we think we're here to teach children, but actually the children are going to be the ones that teach us. They're going to teach us um, more about ourselves than we've ever learned. So flipping the journey, like flipping it to, well, actually, she's coming to teach me to know about myself as opposed to me needing to control and really sort of micromanage her journey.
And so what sort of lessons have you seen kids teach their parents in your work?
Well, I think the biggest lesson is that your child is your mirror. So this is the part that probably scares me the most about what's to come. I see it with my sister and her daughter, and my sister can be super challenged at times by her daughter, and I think, oh yeah, I'm gonna have that journey too, because your daughter is there and she's gonna show you your patterns because they model you. And so this goes back to what we were saying about what's in the unconscious. We don't always know how we're behaving, right? Because our behaviors are driven by our unconscious mind. So we're behaving, we may not be very present, may not be observing ourselves, but our kids are observing us. Our kids are picking up our pattern, they're picking up our habits, and then we see them, maybe speaking in a certain way or acting in a certain way. Or maybe that they're, anxious. I in my experience, had a lot of parents come to me and say, my child's so anxious, my child's so anxious. And I think, but so are you. Where do you think this is coming from? So I used to always work with the children in my work. And then I realized it was actually, I needed to work with the parents and support the parents, because the children were just being these beautiful mirrors, and showing the parents what was going on for themselves unconsciously.
And so with that knowledge of your child is going to mirror a lot of your behaviors, it sounds like that also ties into the work that you can do at the start of your journey to motherhood, is really stepping into your true power and being the person you wish, being so confident in that. So when a child does come into the world, they are reflecting the best version of you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I've been on this journey of personal development and growth, and gosh, I don't even know how long anymore, maybe like 12 years or something like that. I've been working in this field for over eight years now. And I think we can do all the work in the world to prepare ourselves and become the best version of ourselves. But I think it's just peeling back the layers. I highly recommend healing the mother wound.
What's the mother wound?
Before becoming a mother. So often, I think it shows up differently for different people. But I think it's really about, when I was a child, I think my mother, I loved her dearly. She's an amazing woman. But she very much lived in the masculine energy. And so maybe not as connected to her emotions, maybe not as connected to the feminine. And so as much as my mum was the most caring, nurturing mother, I couldn't feel her as a child. And as a child, we perceive certain behaviors from our mother. So if my mum was short, or if my mum had anxiety and worry, I would think, oh my gosh, as a child, my ego would make it mean I've upset my mother. Okay. Or I can't feel her, therefore my mother doesn't love me. So emotional abandonment, I'm a burden, feeling guilty when you're emotional, I'm too much. So it's this, I guess, challenge or wound with the feminine, if that makes sense. And so if you can actually really deeply heal that before becoming a mother, it's a process of learning to remother yourself. So a lot of us, just because of the era that we grew up in, um, uh, emotional intelligence wasn't really around back then, and emotional awareness when I was a child. It wasn't taught in schools, that's for sure. It is now. Um, so if we can go through a process of learning to mother ourselves, and when we go through that and we learn how to hold ourselves and we learn how to nurture ourselves and we learn how to feel our emotions and be the big emotions and regulate and connecting with our own intuition, then when it comes to motherhood, we're able to hold that space to kids. Because if you haven't healed that within yourself, your children are going to come along and they're going to be highly emotional. um, and you're going to find it very challenging to hold space for them. And that will be a really big trigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. So I would highly recommend if you're thinking about pregnancy, you're thinking about having a child, and maybe you suppress your emotions, or you're not okay with your emotions, or you find it hard to be with big emotions, do that work. Definitely do that work.
And so how can someone start to do that work? If someone's going, "Oh shit, you're literally saying everything that I do. I'm freaking out right now. What can I do about it?"
Yeah. So, well, firstly, there's nothing wrong with you. We all have these challenges. So I like to always emphasize that you don't need fixing, but it's just about learning some new skills and strategies and tools, right? Um, so I went off and I learned, there's many different modalities you can learn, but I learned emotional freedom technique. So EFT, I found EFT tapping a really great tool for me personally. Breath work was phenomenal. So working with the body thematically, is really great. Doing some inner child work. So that's something that I do with all the parents that I work with, is inner child work and exploring our own childhood and reparenting our inner child. Um, yeah, find a practitioner that you resonate with. Find a practitioner that you feel safe with, that you resonate with, um, that works on all levels. So it's not just talk therapy. You want to make sure that you're working on a somatic level as well. So subconsciously, thematically, emotionally, energetically, spiritually, that whole all-rounded approach to healing, and learning about the nervous system, learning about your emotions. Um, there's plenty of different courses that you'll be able to find that, provide these tools and skills. It's huge, the field of healing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you open the can of worms and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, there's a lot here." And to your point, it's something that it is still relatively new in terms of just there's more practitioners out there. We're becoming more aware of the benefits of it. I mean, if you were to talk about EFT and breath work, even 10 years ago, people would look at you like you have four heads. You're like, what on earth are you doing? But there's so much evidence around the benefits of a lot of these techniques. I have to admit, I was very skeptical, especially around the EFT technique myself. And that also was an indication that clearly I had something there that was worth exploring if that's triggering me a little bit. But I think as there's more and more people being exposed to these techniques, there's so much more evidence of the benefits of them. It's a bit hard to ignore now. So I encourage anyone to do a little more research in any of those modalities. And so we've spoken about the lead up to conceiving. And so I'd love to transition now to if someone is currently pregnant and they're experiencing all the feels, their whole life is changing in front of their eyes. First of all, what has your journey been like so far? If I was to say pregnancy is a wonderful and enjoyable experience, what would you say to that?
Yeah. Actually, I found that quite challenging, because I did have a few close friends and people in my inner circle that were like, "What do you mean you're having a really hard time? Like, what do you mean you're not coping?" And even my partner was like, "Your dreams are coming true. Why aren't you happy?" So for me, obviously, I went on this conscious conception journey, and when we conceived, it was like, "Oh my goodness!" And then everything sort of came crashing down. So for me, I knew I was pregnant um, before the test. I am very spiritually connected. I saw the sperm and the egg meet in my dream, of course. So I knew I was pregnant at about 3 weeks. So I feel like that's even prolonged the journey because some women don't find out until, they're about 5 weeks or 6 weeks sometimes. Um, but yeah, so for me, there was a lot of hormone. There was a lot of emotion. There was, as I said earlier, there was lots of fear. Um, and I think because there's so much in the past when I was younger, because I was someone who avoided all my emotions. I had addictions. I had exercise bulimia. I had control problems. I had a lot of escapism, very, very busy, working 12, 14-hour days. So I very much avoided that part of myself um, by pushing and living in my masculine energy. So a lot of healing took place prior. And then when I felt pregnant, I honestly felt like I went back to when I was 20. I felt like I went back 18 years and I was like, what? I thought I've done all of this work. What's happening? Um, and it was just the hormones. You don't feel like yourself. So there was this sort of sense of like, who am I? What's going on? My thoughts were very dark. I was very unwell. So I was vomiting, every day, a couple of times a day. I was extremely tired. And yeah, some old traumas surfaced because as I was explaining to you earlier, Miffy, our womb is starting to expand. And there's a saying that your issues are in your tissues. And so as the womb expands, all of the underlying traumas that maybe haven't been released start to surface. So for me, there's been in the past a lot of wounding and abuse with the masculine. So as that started to surface, I was like, get away from me to my partner. I didn't want him anywhere near me. And that's not because of who he is. He's an amazing man and he would do anything for me. Um, but all my old traumas were starting to surface. So it was quite a confusing time. I'm very grateful that I had the awareness around this and what was happening because there's a lot of women that don't. And they think, oh my gosh, I'm going crazy. What's wrong with me? And really freak out. And I know women that have then ended up going to hospital and going to side boards or going to see a doctor um, and then being medicated. And look, I have my own opinions on that. But medication, it can be very supportive and some women may need that. But it's also a band-aid to what's actually going on. What's at the root of all of this? Where's this actually coming from? And what really needs to be processed? So for me, this journey of pregnancy has been this like unraveling on a deeper level of all the things that maybe I haven't yet dealt with. So it's felt like a continuous journey of death. So that doesn't sound very appealing. So I remember I had at the beginning quite a lot of like anger where I was like, why is no one talking about this? Why is no one telling women that this can happen, that this is a part of the journey and the rite of passage of motherhood? That you go through this journey of fully reclaiming your power. So it's like, am I going to give my power away to these old traumas or these thoughts? Or, I noticed that I started to, if there were beliefs or if there were thoughts that were coming up and fearful thoughts about, giving birth or being a mother, or I'd be able to unpack all and really come back to my truth and my power. Or if there were thoughts around my body not being capable or something going wrong, I'd be able to unravel all of that and come back to the truth around that and reclaim my power. And so it's this journey of, for me, it's been this journey of reclaiming my truth and my power and healing ultimately and peeling back more and more layers so that by the time I get to birth, I'll be in full trust of my body, fully in my power. I'm ready to birth this new version of myself, to birth the mother archetype as well.
And you mentioned the pregnancy journey being a series of deaths almost. And I'd love to touch on that a little bit more for women. And I've had a lot of friends who have gone through this experience and they struggle throughout pregnancy because it becomes acutely aware that their life is going to change at the end of this. And it's changing throughout the pregnancy journey as well. As you mentioned, there's hormones in place, but then you start thinking of, hang on, my life is never going to be the same in the most beautiful way possible. And it can be really challenging throughout that pregnancy journey for these women to come to terms with that and learn to start living with that. So what advice would you have for someone who's currently battling with the changing identity?
Yeah. So for me, it's been about trusting in life, trusting in the process of life, trusting in the cycle of life. We're moving through an initiation. You're moving through the initiation of motherhood. And that's the archetype of the mother. So before motherhood, we're in what's called or known as the archetype of the maiden. Um, and so what we say is really important that often doesn't happen, and it goes, it's missed. And I think it's really important to do this, but it's to acknowledge your maiden. So acknowledge who you've been on the journey all the way up until motherhood. So for me, it looks like a trip to Bali. On my own, without my partner, to be able to just be with myself, because my whole entire life I've been a traveler. Since I was 18, I've traveled the world on my own, loved it, explored, adventured. So I wanted to go and do that. So it was like really tuning into what's important to me to close off this chapter of Maiden and really honoring that part of myself. So honoring the pain I've been through, honoring all of the successes I've had, honoring all the adventures I've been on and the learnings that have taken place. So I've really taken time I've even written a letter. I've written a letter to that part of myself and really thanked her for getting me to where I am now, and honoring and acknowledging. And so that by the time when we get to motherhood, it's not as daunting because you've gone through this process, I guess, like I said, of death, and a real grief can come up. I know I was freaking out for a really long time because, Missy, you relate to this. I'm a manifestor in human design, and I was going, how am I going to have any alone time as a mother? She's going to be in my energy all the time. And even in pregnancy, actually, it's felt that way. So because she's inside of me, I can feel her. She's kicking me all the time. And so it's already that responsibility. So I think if you can allow the transition, because in pregnancy, like for me, I've not been able to really exercise, to be honest, because I've been so unwell. And that's unusual for me because exercise was a big part of my life. So there's already been a sacrifice. To some extent, you're sacrificing your body. I've sacrificed my exercise. Haven't been able to work how I was working. Haven't been able to socialize. I've spent a lot of the pregnancy in bed. So surrendering to your journey and allowing whatever your journey needs to be will provide you with the lessons that you need to take into motherhood. So for me, letting go of control, been a pattern my whole life. So letting go of control, learning how to surrender more to life, learning how to trust in myself, in my body, and in a process. These are all things that have been lifelong lessons. So, it makes total sense. They've come up again in pregnancy. So every single woman will have their own unique individual journey, depending on what their soul needs to learn to be able to step into motherhood. So if you can tap into that, it will just make that journey so much easier.
And you mentioned two words, sacrifice and surrender. And I think there's some really common definitions of those words. So sacrifice is something that's normally taken quite negatively, like, oh, I sacrifice so much to get some outcomes. And also surrendering can almost sound like giving up. And so I'm keen to hear your versions of those words and what they mean to you and how they can be really empowering in your journey to motherhood.
Yeah. Well, actually, as much as I said, I've sacrificed exercise, which brings me joy. I've also seen the flip side. So I had exercise bulimia. So I used to exercise to escape. So of course in pregnancy, it's like, no, we'll make sure she can't exercise because otherwise she might use that to escape, right? So it, again, becoming conscious, becoming aware of your patterns and noticing how things play out. And so, yeah, so I guess an element of surrender was needed for me. Like it had to happen. Um, and the sacrifice, I think there's a part of me that really believes that women get to do things differently because there's this shadow archetype I want to talk to. I really need to bring this up because it's coming through very strongly. There's this shadow archetype called the martyr. And the martyr is something that a lot of women may have generationally. I know it ran through my lineage. And the martyr is someone who believes they have to sacrifice and they have to put everyone first and people please and do the right thing and constantly give and pour from an empty cup. And then I'll be loved. Then I'll be liked. Now, yes, we sacrifice our body, but are we really? Because we get a lot out of it. We actually, I tell you what, I've been in creation mode for 7 months. As much as I'm creating life, I'm creating programs in my business and I'm creating abundance and I'm creating, so as much as, yes, I'm sacrificing body, I'm being given so much from this experience as well. So is it really a sacrifice? And so when we think about the martyr and motherhood, I truly believe that that is why there's a lot of women that fear motherhood is because of this martyr. So if we can work through all the patterns of not setting boundaries, people pleasing, giving to get love, pouring from an empty cup to prove myself that I'm good enough. And so if you can take all of that and work on that in pregnancy, would totally change your life. There won't be as much sacrifice. There'll be more, oh my gosh, I'm choosing to do this. Oh my gosh, I get to do this, as opposed to I have to do this. So yeah, I think that motherhood means that we get to care for ourselves more. I've had more self-care this pregnancy than I think I've had my whole life. I have acupuncture most weeks. I go to chiropractor. I go and have a float tank. Get in the magnesium spa. I go to prenatal yoga for 3 hours every week. I have a lot of support, and that's been phenomenal to know that as a mother, I can receive that so that I have the nourishment I need to create this being, beautiful baby. So we can balance out that sacrifice by looking at what am I gaining from this and not so much coming from that martyr archetype.
Yeah. And you mentioned another word there, support. And I think it can be really challenging for women to receive support. And so knowing that it's a really integral part of this journey, and I mean, everyone needs support. And so if a woman's feeling challenged with the concept of getting support, what would you say to her?
Yeah. Again, that comes back to that feminine wounding, right? It comes back to our receivership wound or challenge. Do I feel like a burden when I receive? Do I feel guilty when I receive? I don't want to put other people out. Am I worthy of receiving? So unpacking, unraveling all these patterns and where they actually come from in your childhood, because that's where it will usually originate from. Then you can start to claim your worth. You can start to call in support. I have a beautiful sisterhood of women around me. And I've never felt more supported than what I feel right now in my pregnancy. And I don't have any family near me at all. And so a lot of people have asked, are you concerned about that? Not having family nearby to do this, and all of these things. But I truly believe that when we heal the wound of receiving and being unable to receive support, and we realize that actually it's our birthright as women. We look back to tribal ways. We look back to all the ancient ways. Women did this together. We did this in community. It was like, can you hold my baby? I'm doing this. Like there was constant support. We're not meant to do it alone. It's just the way in which society has conditioned us. Um, and I guess the way society has evolved with women's rights and all of these things, sometimes I wonder whether we've shot ourselves in the foot a little bit as women, because yes, I have a purpose, I have a big mission, and I'm here to serve the masses and live that out. But also equally, I'm a woman and I'm a mother, and I get to be supported in that role and in that identity and that path as well.
That's so beautiful as well, like, especially how you've shared that you do have a big vision and a really strong purpose, and I see that come through in all your work and just the way you language it in terms of you can do both. It's not like you can only be a mother or you can only chase the career, for lack of a better term,
Mhm.
and so again, if a woman is being challenged by the thought of potentially only being able to do one or the other, what would your words of wisdom be to
Oh,
her?
I'm so glad you asked this question. Um, 18 months ago, I started working with the most incredible woman, Secret Cousins. She was my mentor for 18 months. And I went to her because I wanted to become a mother and I wanted to be able to still live my mission and work. And I wanted to do it in a spacious way. So I wanted to be the mother that nourished, the mother that supported, the mother that is abundant, the mother that still earns money, and is super, super present with their child. Now, a lot of people listening might be thinking, yeah, good luck. How are you going to do that? But I can tell you over the past 18 months, this is what I was talking about, moving through all the blocks, moving through all the unconscious beliefs and the behavior patterns that are stopping that. I've absolutely created that. You know, currently I'm only working 3 days. I only see a couple of clients on those days. I have a couple of days a week to myself just for nourishment in this pregnancy. Mondays and Wednesdays, I nourish myself just because uh, my business is earning more money than it's ever earned before. And my mission is really interwoven with actually having children, because some of the listeners may know, and I know you know, Mickey, that I run a lot of programs for parents. So having a baby, I feel like I'd probably even be able to take her on a call if I needed to. I think it would be fine. I think it's really just peeling back all of the layers and the beliefs around that we can't have it all, because I believe that we can.
And we've spoken a lot on this podcast about the pregnancy journey. And I know you do a lot of work, as you mentioned, with parents, so people who have already welcomed kids into their family. Are you able to speak to what you offer as part of that support?
Yeah, so I offer a community. Uh, Firstly, I have a free Facebook community for anyone who wants to join that. Conscious parenting, and I'm often popping in resources and tools and different things into that community, and running free online parent circles where parents can come to be seen and heard and fully expressed and without any judgment in a safe, loving space. 'Cause I think that's really important, is creating that community and tribe. And then I run a program that goes for anywhere between sort of 4 to 6 months. Parents work through the program at their own pace. They complete modules. And then we have group coaching calls as well. And the theme of it is around conscious parenting, learning how to parent with more ease and flow. We go through learning how to nourish your relationship with your kids, because I believe the relationship is sort of absolutely crucial to harmony in the home and making parenting more easeful. We go through unpacking and healing your triggers as a parent, because as I said, your children are going to trigger the shit out of you. They're your mirror. They're going to show you parts of yourself you didn't know existed. That's confronting. Um, and then we learn about how to create more harmony in the home. So there's a lot in there around human behavior. There's a lot in there around communication tools and strategies, and supporting your children with their emotions and nervous system regulation and all of those sorts of things. It's a really full, jam-packed program with lots of tools and strategies. But at the same time, through the coaching experience, parents get to bring all of their own personalized challenges, and we unpack. and we find solutions. Yeah.
And so in this episode, you shared so much value in terms of what a woman can do to feel really prepared to bring a child into this world. And if someone's listening to this and they already have a child, there's still things you can do if you're like, oh shit, like everything you've said resonates with me. What can I do about it? There is support after you've had a child too to move through all of this. And you offer that in your programs as well. I'd love to know, for someone who is either thinking about starting their journey to motherhood or is currently in potentially the early stages of it, what's a really actionable step that you could offer someone in the next 24 to 48 hours to support them on this journey?
Yeah. Get support. So I'm a big believer that we're not meant to do this journey alone. Even in my preparation, I was working with a coach and a mentor for 18 months. I was working with people in my nutritional health. I was working with people energetically. I am a big believer that we get to have support. And even as a parent, we're not born knowing how to parent, and we're going to parent however we were parented. Even if you have desires to do it differently, we fall back into the default program because we haven't done the healing work around our inner child and our own experiences, and usually just our nervous system and emotion regulation. So get support, learn how to regulate your nervous system, learn how to process your emotions. I have a program, as I've spoken about, conscious parenting. I'm also going to be releasing another program early next year for women that are on the pregnancy journey to support them through, I like to say, the darkness, because that's what it is. It's like we're journeying through this darkness, and when we're going to get to the end, we're going to have this big birth. You know, we're not only birthing a child, but we're birthing the new version of ourselves. So yeah, get support.
Awesome. And I'll pop all those links into the show notes for anyone who's interested in learning more about those. But thank you so much, Ange, for your time and for sharing all that insight. It's definitely not a subject that's talked about enough. And I hope that there's some women out there who feel more supported on their journey. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And if anyone feels called to reach out, even just for a chat or, just needing a little bit of support, I am here. And yeah, you'll have all my details. The thought of someone doing the journey alone breaks my heart. So yeah, please get support.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Actually You Can podcast. I so enjoy having you here, and I hope you've taken away powerful insights and tools that will support you to achieve your high-level results. Now, before you go apply all of this wisdom in your life, I would be so grateful if you are able to leave us a podcast review on the platform that you're listening to, or share this episode with a friend. Your support means that we can help more self-led, high-performing individuals just like you expand what's possible for them. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, so please go on and shoot me a note on socials and let me know what you think. You can find me on Instagram at MiffGalloway. Now, go ahead and make those dreams a reality, because actually, you can.